Have you ever really thought about what happens after you do a good deed? I don't mean out in the world, but, inside your own mind. Today we're going to explore that. We're talking about the deep, often invisible results of our wholesome actions, this kind of silent, peaceful echo that literally shapes our consciousness. Okay, let's get into it. So this is really the big question for our whole explainer today. We're not talking about getting a thank you or some external reward. We're talking about a fundamental, internal shift in the actual quality of your mind. It's a pretty incredible concept that gets right to the heart of how our actions build who you are, not just moment to moment, but life to life. All right, so here's our roadmap. We'll start by defining what this echo of good karma really is. Then we'll get into its eightfold blueprint, how it's structured, and its four main jobs. We'll also connect the dots to see how it shapes our destiny. And finally, peek inside at the mind's inner qualities. Okay, let's dive into our first section. The Pali term for this conscious echo, and don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds, is Maha Vipaka chittas. This basically just translates to the great resultant consciousnesses. It's the technical term for that beautiful, quiet after effect of our good actions. Now, this is the most important thing to get right off the bat. These states of consciousness are not actions. They are the results, the vipaka, of good things we've done in the past. You can think of it like planting a seed, right? The wholesome action is the planting. The Maha Vipaka citta is the beautiful, peaceful flower that just blooms later, completely on its own. And it's not just one size fits all. The teachings map this out with incredible precision. There are eight distinct types of this great resultant consciousness, and we're about to see exactly how we arrive at that number. What's really cool is how the name itself kind of gives away the whole story. They're called beautiful because they're linked to all the good stuff: non-attachment, goodwill, wisdom. They're great simply because there are 8 of them, more than other types. And this is key. They're karmically neutral. They're just an echo. They don't create new ripples. And finally, they're peaceful because they just arise, effortlessly, pushed forward by the momentum of past good karma. So how on earth do we get to 8 specific types? Well, it's not random at all. It actually comes down to a perfectly logical combination of 3 key variables that were present in the original wholesome action itself. The first variable is feeling, or Vedana. The result of a good deed can show up with a really joyful, pleasant feeling. That's somanasa. Or it can arise with this super calm, balanced, neutral feeling, a state of equanimity, or upekkha. So right there, boom, we've split them into 2 main categories. The second variable is knowledge, jnana. The question here is, was the original good deed done with a real understanding of karma and its results? If the answer is yes, then the resulting consciousness is associated with knowledge. But if the good deed was done more out of instinct, without that deeper wisdom, then the result is disconnected from knowledge. And the final piece of this puzzle is prompting. Think about how the good deed was done. Was it spontaneous, totally from your own initiative? That's asanghadika, or unprompted. Or did you do it after someone else suggested it or encouraged you? That's sasanghadika, or prompted. Even that little detail from the original act gets reflected in the result. It's that precise. And look at this. This chart shows how it all just clicks into place. You take the 2 types of feeling, multiply by the 2 types of knowledge association, and multiply by the 2 types of prompting. 2 times 2 times 2 gives us our 8 totally unique types of great resultant consciousness. It's just a beautiful, elegant system. Okay, so we know what they are, and we know how they're categorized, but what do they actually do? This is where things get really, really profound. It turns out this type of consciousness is responsible for some of the most fundamental functions of our entire existence. There are 4 core functions, 4 massive jobs that these 8 states of consciousness handle. And they literally bookend our lives, from the very first instant to the very last. This is just incredible. One of these 8 consciousnesses is your rebirth linking consciousness. That's the very first spark of a new life. Then it becomes the life continuum. That's the default underlying stream of your mind when you're just sitting there, not actively thinking. And then it's the same consciousness that serves as the death moment, the very last thought of your life. It also does a smaller job called registration, where it just briefly notes an experience after your mind has processed it. So let's dig into that a little more. That connection between this consciousness and our life's journey. The quality of our past actions doesn't just give us a few nice feelings here and there. Nope, it literally determines the foundational fabric of the mind we are born with. So this is the really critical part to understand. The type of consciousness that kicked off your life is the exact same one that sustains it in the quiet moments and the exact same one that will be there at the very end. The quality of that first spark, which was set by past karma, really does set the fundamental tone for an entire lifetime.
And this distinction leads to two different kinds of starting points for a person. A Vipaka person is someone born with one of those four resultant states that's associated with knowledge. This means they're born with all three wholesome roots, including wisdom. And because of that, they have the built-in potential to achieve deep meditative states. On the other hand, a Dvishituka person is born with a consciousness disconnected from knowledge. They're missing that root of wisdom, which means their capacity for certain spiritual achievements is limited in that particular life.
All right, for our last section, let's pop the hood and look at the actual ingredients. What specific mental factors make up these resultant states? What's in the mix? And maybe more importantly, what's not? Now, this is really fascinating. What's missing from the list? Mental factors like right speech or compassion or appreciative joy. They're not here. And you might wonder why not. Well, it's because those are active, karma-creating states. Resultant consciousness is totally passive. It's the result, remember? It can't perform a new good deed. It's simply enjoying the fruit of an old one. And this chart just makes it super clear. The richness of the mind is tied directly to wisdom. The four types of consciousness that are disconnected from knowledge, they're made up of 31 associated mental factors. But the four types that are associated with knowledge are richer. They're composed of 33 mental factors. That one ingredient, that root of wisdom, brings a more complex and complete mental state along with it. All right, let's wrap this up with the key takeaways. First, Maha Vipaka chittas are the passive, beautiful results of our good deeds. Second, they are perfectly classified into 8 types based on feeling, knowledge, and prompting. Third, they perform the massive functions of birth, life, and death. And finally, the type you're born with really does define your innate capacity for wisdom and spiritual growth. And that really just leaves us with one final thought to sit with. Everything we've talked about has been the results of things already done. But every single action you're taking right now, especially the ones with good intentions and a bit of wisdom, well, you're planting the seeds for your own future resultant consciousness. So the question really is, what kind of echo are you creating for yourself today?